Welcome to the England Rugby Pod. Thanks for downloading episode 154. With the Typhoon putting an end to the England v France and New Zealand v Italy fixtures, should World Rugby have had a little more foresight? It is, after all, Typhoon season in Japan. You're listening to the England Rugby Pod, the rugby podcast that believes England will win the World Cup in 2019. Hey guys, welcome back. A bit of a mixed episode this week. Obviously, it's our midweek roundup, but the plan had been to focus a little bit on the final Pool C match between England and France, and of course, it's been called off. So I'm joined by Dan to discuss what's going on in this Rugby World Cup. Dan, how are you, mate?
Good morning, mate. Yeah, I'm very well, thanks. I believe that's the first time in World Cup history that a game has had to be called off.
Yeah, it's obviously really disappointing. It's left us a little bit flat for this midweek episode. I mean, we're going to have to come up with a plan for what we would have done on Saturday. I'm not quite sure whether we're going to bother. I'm just going to cry into our tea.
Yeah.
But let's. I mean, I think
we need to discuss this. We need to.
We do. This is a big talking point. There's lots of things surrounding this. We'll come on to it. There's a few things. Let's cover some of the games that have happened, and just see what's going on in the rest of the Rugby World Cup, and then we'll come back to this, and this will be the main focus of the episode. Just before we do, we've had another review. I usually have these ready to go, sitting in front of me, and I do now. Here it is. This is from Will Crisp. He says, "Hi guys, long-term listener of the pod, and I must thank you as your pod, amongst others, has kept me entertained as I recover from a shoulder operation. Village rugby at its finest. Just a thought about the current squad. Can you remember a time when England was in such a privileged position to be debating which world-class player they would have to leave behind? 4 or 5 years ago, we might be debating whether our starting players were up to scratch. We now have world-class players that aren't even making the 23, Cokanasiga, Wilson, etc. With the players available to England, they should comfortably go all the way." And he goes on to say that Ford, for me, is playing much better than Faz at the moment. If we moved Faz to the bench, it frees up a spot for Tuilagi, JJ or Slade, and we know how destructive they can be when the game opens up. Thoughts on that? And he's left us. He's reviewed us once before. He left us 5 stars previously on iTunes as Crispy Dinner, and he says, "Please keep the pod beyond the World Cup. All the best, Will Crisp."
Will, well, thank you very much. Firstly, best of luck with the shoulder recovery. I've had shoulder issues myself. It's a pain in the ass. Well,
pain in the shoulder, mate.
Yeah, but all the best with that, mate.
Getting the wrong treatment.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably why mine took so long to heal. What do we say? So a few points there. He thinks Ford's playing better than Farrell. 100% agree with that. I think Ford is best fly half in the World Cup at the moment.
Well, he's making a lot of pundits World 15.
Yeah, I think he's the most formed fly half in the World Cup. Farrell on the bench. I do disagree with that, actually. I see where he's coming from, because it does free up space, because having like Tuilagi and JJ does sound pretty naughty.
I think the thing is, if you're saying Farrell on the bench and you're looking at a 23, so you're not really freeing up a space for one of those guys, because that person could be on the bench and things could get changed around during the game. I think you start with him. He's your captain. You've made a commitment. Obviously, there is a line that you draw, but I wouldn't say that he's playing badly.
I don't think he's near that line.
He had a little bit of an off game against Argentina, but he was still good. So I wouldn't freak out just yet. He's the kind of player that has a habit, I think, of reacting to poor performances with great ones. So I have full confidence.
Oh, absolutely. It is a good point, though. But I mean, if you had to go with Ford or Farrell at the moment, you would go with Ford.
Yeah,
I'm not sure Eddie would, because of what you have mentioned with all the extras that Farrell brings and the captain. But George Ford at the moment, he's having a hell of a tournament.
I guess there's a question of we've for a very long time at least, we've not seen Ford at 10 for England without Farrell inside him.
Yeah.
Well,
outside him.
Outside him. So there is I guess from Eddie's point of view.
without seeing Farrell inside him.
Yeah, that's what I said, mate. Let's move on.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, that just came to me. I've been slow. I apologise. Carry on.
So I guess the question is, would he, is there an element? I mean, there's all talk about, are they telepathic? But is there an element of their experience of playing together and knowing each other so well that helps to enable Ford to produce the kind of performances that he does? And would it be as good if he had, Manu inside him or Henry Slade?
Stop saying inside, outside.
Well, no, because I'm thinking that Manu's coming in on the crash ball, mate. Manu's coming in on the crash ball. He's looping inside.
Okay.
Would it be the same? You know what I'm trying to say?
Well, I'm not sure I do. I don't know what you've been watching, but get your head back on the rugby, please. Would it be the same? I think so. Normally, I would possibly agree with that. It may be different. But actually, I think Ford's been playing so well all season that I don't think he's playing well because of Farrell. I think he's playing well because he's just on great form at the moment and he's a great player.
Is that why Farrell's not playing so well? Spending too much time inside Ford?
Possibly that's it. Maybe he needs to focus more on this rugby, hey? What do we think? So, yes, Ford for me has to start at 10. And I think at the moment, Farrell starts at 12.
I agree. I think, Tuolangi, you're basically looking at the match and saying, do we want a power game, in which case you're looking at Tuolangi 13, or do you want to open the game up a little bit more, in which case, you then need to decide, are you going with a Tuolangi perhaps at 12 with a JJ or a Slade at 13, or are you even going the other way and saying, well, you want a Slade and a JJ. Sorry, I've just got that completely muddled up, haven't I? Sorry. Farrell at 12. The question is, do you go Tuolangi at 13, power game, or do you go with a JJ or a Slade to open the game up, have a bit more of a sort of playmaker with the pace and everything else?
Will makes a good point. Yeah, that's interesting because that's what it leads to. Will just make a good point now. If Farrell wasn't captain...
Would you not drop, but move to the bench?
If you're going purely on form, I would probably go Ford with Tuolangi at 12 and JJ at 13. But
it's a good problem to have. As long as Eddie makes the right choice, and obviously we don't know what that is.
We don't know what that is, and actually that follows on nicely to Will's other point about how nice it to have such world-class players we're picking from. I couldn't agree more. We have got some absolute quality and talent in our ranks at the moment, and it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be it's always a pleasure to be a fan, but it's particularly a pleasure at the moment to be an England fan.
Yeah, I mean, part of me does worry that, with all that strength in depth, is it more difficult to know what your gun 23 is? Because it's all well and good saying we've got so many people to pick from, so many great players to choose from, but you've got to pick your best 23.
Yeah.
And at the moment, I don't know what that is. Like, a lot of the positions I think they're pretty inked in, but the back three, the centres, even fly half. I mean, I think we've made a decision on that one now, but all of these positions we have options.
Back three and forwards and backs, yeah.
And it feels like that's the sort of thing you want to have before a World Cup. It's not what you want to have going into a quarter-final. You want to know what your gun team looks like. I just can't decide whether having Tuolangi and Cokanasiga on the pitch at the same time is like we had against Ireland, and we saw how devastating that was. Is that peak England, or are we? Do we need more? I say more pace. Cokanasiga is apparently the second fastest guy on the pitch, despite being 120 kilos. But do we need more? Do we need to have the Watsons and the Mays on the wings, the JJs in the centres, perhaps a Tuolangi in the middle to break defences? But is he as effective? When oppositions are able to double up on him.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And second fastest. Do you know what distance that's over?
At least 7 or 8 metres.
At least 7.
No, I imagine 100 metres. There's no way that Big Joe doesn't need a little bit of room just to get up to speed.
Well, exactly, because speed, basically, on a rugby pitch, the most important speed is probably your first 10, 15.
Yeah, like a Watson or a JJ.
Like a Christian Slade, yeah, exactly, or a Watson JJ. So it makes it interesting. And everyone always says, it's a great problem to have. I don't think it's always a great problem to have, as for the reasons you just mentioned.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
But this is why I think Joe Cokanasiga needs to be on the bench, because it gives us that option to change things up if needs be. Even though I don't think he's as good as alternative wingers, and that's where the problem lies. You got Jack Noel, you got Anthony Watson, you got Johnny May. Already you've got one too many in those three. Then you've got Joe Cokanasiga, so you've now got twice as many people as you want for the wing. You've got Daly at fullback, so you probably need to have Watson involved so that you've got fullback cover. Jack Noel was looking awesome when he came on. Like, what do you do?
Yeah, it's a big one, and unfortunately, we won't be able to debate that team for another week now.
I know.
Which is a pain in the arse. But before we actually go on to all the England stuff, shall we? Because there's quite a lot to chat about there.
Yeah, I mean, there've been some other interesting games this week. So obviously, since England last played against Argentina at the weekend, Japan beat Samoa 38-19. New Zealand decimated Namibia, not surprisingly, 71-9.
Did you watch that game though?
Yeah. To be fair, Namibia looked,
they looked great for half an hour. Didn't
they? Well, they were in it. It was about 12-9. I think they even took the lead, didn't they?
I think there was 10-9 at one point.
10-9. But for a good sort of 30 minutes, and then New Zealand basically had won the game in the last 10 minutes of the first half.
Which is fair enough.
And then obviously closed it out all throughout the second half, and 71-9 the end result there. I mean, no surprises. But, yeah. France-Tonga. Now this was a really interesting one. Obviously, at this point we were thinking we've got France in a week, just under a week. Could Tonga do something? I mean, Tonga against Argentina, I thought were unlucky. They made some really silly errors early on, and they nilled Argentina in the second half. So I thought they were, Tonga lost that rather than getting beaten. So it was always going to be an interesting one when you consider that France probably should have lost to Argentina, but for that offside call. And it didn't disappoint.
Well, also France-Tonga, that's interesting. Had France lost to Tonga, both France and Argentina would be on 11 points. And France would be going through, but would be going through based on a match cancellation.
Yeah.
So this is where the sort of cancellation be. I mean, that's not the reality, so let's not go down that route too much. But France-Tonga, you and I chatted about this the other day at quite a lot of length, didn't we? And we can go through it now because it's not obviously going to be part of a match day chat. Everyone, when we were saying which France will turn up, at the moment there is only one France, and they're not great.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna bring back the which France will turn up debate because obviously their next game is looking likely to be against Wales.
Yeah, and they've got quite good history against Wales.
Yeah, really good history. So yeah, I reckon France are turning up for that one. But yeah, no, you're right. It's the whole kind of cliched which France are going to turn up debate is, I think, it's not what it used to be. It's all well and good to look at the team sheet and say these guys as individuals are great, and they show that. They've shown that all throughout this World Cup. Individually, they can have these little moments of genius, but they last like 2 minutes.
It's like Fiji, isn't it? Fiji,
and then it's all over.
Player for player, Fiji are one of the best in the world, easily. Some of their players are unreal. But if it doesn't count as a 15, I guess that doesn't really matter.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the problem is that, the France that turns up and absolutely decimates an opposition is a France that has a huge number of individual moments because they don't seem to be able to string together, what tends to be necessary to work your way through, the pools and then the knockout stages of a World Cup. And I think England probably would have gone with a relative second team out of the 31, and I think they probably still would have beaten France, and I would have banked on a bonus point again. I just don't think that France offered enough opposition. But we'll see what happens when they play Wales. But I suspect Wales are going to get a fairly easy ride through the quarterfinals as a result.
Yeah, I suspect you're probably right. I mean, France against Tonga was pretty poor, but then saying Wales needs to ride through, Fiji gave Wales a scare, didn't they?
Oh, well, yes.
They certainly did to start.
I called this early on, and I said, watch Fiji, because the trouble is Fiji let themselves down when they decided to play a second team against Uruguay, and then had that sort of brain fart match where everything went wrong, and they thought they'd won it in the first 5 minutes and went to sleep. If they'd won that yesterday would have been very interesting.
Yeah. That would have been massive.
But more importantly,
if they'd won that with a bonus point as well.
Yeah, but more importantly, a lot of Welsh fans, as tends to be the case with home fans, kind of saying everyone needs to chill out. Wales have done what they needed to do. They're through to the quarterfinals. They've topped their group. How can we just be disappointed? You can be disappointed because you conceded. Admittedly, one of them was a forward pass and disallowed, but it didn't need to be a forward pass to be a try. 3 tries in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That's why you're disappointed, because there aren't many teams left in the World Cup once we hit the knockouts who are going to give up an advantage of potentially 21 points in 10 minutes.
I mean, let's be a bit careful here.
In the World Cup, I said, not in the Six Nations against Scotland. Good. We felt sorry for Scotland. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
But no, but it happened. Yeah, sure. These records exist, but the reality is, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
And the thing with Wales, and this is the difference between, say, Wales and Australia. Fiji were obviously up against Australia at 60 minutes. Australia came back and ultimately clinched that one, 39-21. But Wales are not, by no means, the most attacking team in World Rugby. For a long time, their defence has been key. Well, if your defence is the strongest part of your game and you want to be the best team in the world, you've just given up 3 tries in 10 minutes. I think you'd be right to be concerned. If it was England and that had happened, I would be concerned.
Yeah, Wales can grind out games and can win, but to me, I can't see how Wales, the way they play, the way they're playing, I can't see how they could win this World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, what doesn't help, of course, that Dan Biggers, I don't know how serious it is, but already the second choice fly half, although admittedly, I think he's been brilliant.
Yeah, he has been good.
But he is officially the second choice fly half, and he just obviously took a pretty bad knock, and who knows when he'll next be available. I don't know. I haven't seen any reports on it yet because the news has been fairly full of something else that we're going to discuss. It is a bit of a worry. Take a couple of injuries sustained in that game. Fiji looked awesome. I think it's brilliant for them. I just hope that World Rugby find a way to give teams like Fiji, who clearly are beyond the standard of the Pacific Nations Cup. Is it Pacific Nations Cup?
Yeah.
They need to be given more exposure to top tier rugby. I don't really know how.
Well, this is a massive World Rugby debate, isn't it? And we'll chat about World Rugby in a bit, because with Fiji's talent, if they had more infrastructure, the reality is their players have to play abroad, because with their talent, they'd be idiots not to. There's not the money in Fiji, and there's never going to be, and it's not at all World Rugby's fault. But if there could be more money, perhaps, in their infrastructure, so they could train together more in Fiji, as Japan have done. Japan are looking a good team now, and if Fiji could sort of go down that route, give the national team more financial and sort of time resource, then Fiji could be...
How do you go about doing that? Because you've got to look at the clubs.
No idea.
These players, they're playing for clubs in New Zealand and Australia and
England, France.
In the top leagues around the world. They obviously can't play their domestic rugby in Fiji because it's non-existent at that level.
Yeah.
So they have to do this. The clubs are not going to turn around and say, yeah, we'll pay you a salary, but you, because you're Fiji, get to have more time off to go and train with your country.
Well, I mean, no, but there's some people. I mean, Fiji don't get to give anywhere near as much as, say, England do. And if they did that, they might sign deals with their clubs based upon release clauses for international duty. I know there's rules about international windows and things like that. It's a real tough one, and it's not. I'm not blaming anybody for this situation because part of it is you are where you are, but it is something to be looked at because if Fiji genuinely were given all the resources England had from a time, monetary, etc., they would probably be one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the world.
Well, ironically, if that was the case, you'd probably find there's a lot of players playing around the world, for other nations who would perhaps not have done what they did, and would be playing, for their homelands.
Yeah.
So you'd see massive transformation there, and what would be the impact on New Zealand, for example, or Australia, and how many of the Islanders, Pacific Islanders, are playing for those teams if they had the ability to play, for Fiji instead, without it being financially
burdensome.
Yeah, surely they would do that. Or,
burdensome may be the wrong word.
I think it's not a word, full stop. But we'll use it. We'll go with it.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Let's move on. Either way, it's a shame. It's a shame we're losing Fiji in this World Cup, but
they've been a joy. They have been a joy to watch.
Yeah, the right 2 teams in Pool D look like they're going through in Australia.
But that was a great game.
Yes,
that Wales-Fiji match. So yeah, enjoyed that. Wales looking like they're going through in top spot. Sure. Is that official? Must be now.
Well, Wales and Australia both have a game left. But
Wales,
of
course they do. Yeah. Wales. Wales have got Uruguay. So yeah.
Yeah. So yes. Let's say it is official.
And Australia have got Georgia. Probably 5 points apiece, and they go through in that order. So
I don't think Georgia will get 5 points against Australia, but I think they'll do all right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it affects us because one of those 2 is who we'll face in the quarterfinals. But yeah, it is looking like it's going to be Australia. But that's fine. So we do Australia, then we do New Zealand, and then we do South Africa in the final. Jobs are good.
Yes. Yeah.
More interestingly, I think, is Scotland. Scotland against Japan, because that is huge in terms of group. Are they Pool A?
Yeah. Yeah, and so this is where we need to sort of probably go into more depth about these cancellations. Now,
well, before the cancellations, let's look at what it means if nothing's cancelled and everything was get played as normal, and then we'll come on to what the impact is of the cancellations. Yeah. Because as things currently stand, you've got Japan topping the group with 14 points, one game in hand. You've got Ireland in second with 11 points, one game in hand, and you've got Scotland in third with 10 points, one game in hand. So obviously, a Japan win, they top the group. Job done. Scotland going home. Scotland need to beat Japan with a bonus point.
Japan win or draw and top the group.
Scotland need to beat Japan and Japan not get a bonus point. Is that right?
Yeah, they need to win by 4 points. Yeah. So if Scotland get a bonus point and Japan get a bonus point,
yeah, not 4 points as in four points from two conversions.
4 points as in Scotland need to get 4 points more out of the game than Japan. Yeah.
So yes. So a win is enough as long as it's by more than 7.
Yep.
Or a bonus point win, and Japan not get a losing bonus point and a 4-try bonus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's a big ask, especially when probably the more important question for Scotland is how do we not lose?
Yes. I mean, Scotland looked pretty clinical against Russia, which I know. Let's not use that one. Actually,
I think the important thing to remember here is that as this World Cup's gone on, the minnows, as they've been referred to on numerous occasions, they're obviously not used to playing this level of rugby full stop. They're certainly not used to stringing together 4 or 5 games in a row. So inevitably, you've got someone like a Russia who comes along, massive underdog, Japan in the opening game. They put up a bit of a fight for the first sort of 20, 30 minutes, but ultimately Japan beaten 30 points to 10. Well, that Russia's never going to be able to put in as big a performance, in the last game of the pool stages 3 weeks later as they have done in the opening game of the World Cup. So I don't think you can look at it and go, well, Japan beat Russia by 20 points, 30 points to 10, but Scotland decimated Russia and therefore Scotland are clearly the stronger side, because I don't think it's apples and apples.
Yeah, sure. It's okay. So we've looked at that, and that's the case here. Now, this is where we're going to go into the more political side of rugby, because both you and I love a political chat. If the Scotland-Japan match is called off, I will feel cheated. I'm not a Scotland fan. I'm not a Japan fan. In actual fact, I kind of want Japan to win and top the group. But could you imagine being a Scottish player? You're one World Cup, your one chance, even for matches called off, even an Italian player against New Zealand, there'll be a lot of players there. So one chance to play against the consistently over the years best team in the world in a World Cup, and they've been taken away that chance. Now, yes, if it's a complete freak of nature, there's nothing you can do. But October's typhoon season in Japan, have World Rugby, and don't get me wrong here, let me be clear here first. I think Japan have put on a great tournament. I love the fact it's gone somewhere different. But have World Rugby screwed up by putting the World Cup in a country that in a country in typhoon season?
It's a difficult one because it's typhoon season every year. So Japan is able to deal with it. Have they screwed up?
I mean, could you
what are the alternatives? Because you can't suddenly just have a World Cup at a completely different time of year.
Well, exactly. So that would be an alternative. But like you say, you can't really do that. Or could the alternative be actually build in an extra week for the World Cup and say, look, there might be a typhoon. So there's a week between perhaps the final pool game and the quarterfinals, which, yes, is a bit more painful. But so if a match is called off, you have that extra week to replay those games.
Yeah, maybe. I think one of the things that people have been saying on Twitter is, why, as you've pointed out, they're aware that there was always a possibility to the point that they actually put out guidelines as to what would happen in the event of a game being called off. So it was already, they were aware there was a possibility of this, and obviously quietly hoping that it wouldn't come to it. You look at the route that the typhoon is going to take, and it kind of stretches along the eastern coast. Surely, with the amount of warning that we've got, we've had the best part of a week where we've thought this might happen. Surely you could have put contingencies in place to say, look, in the event that this happens, we're going to fly the teams somewhere else. It doesn't even have to be in Japan. We'll fly them down to New Zealand or somewhere. And if you have to play in an empty stadium, you play in an empty stadium. But you play the game. I think it, like I'm absolutely. I completely understand that safety comes first, and I think we need to be genuinely concerned. The typhoon that caused England to be delayed for 8 hours or whatever it was when they arrived in Japan, it was 400 kilometres across. This one, 1,400.
Jesus Christ.
There's the potential for this to be really significant, not just stopping a rugby match from happening, but potentially like the damage that it could cause. This is pretty serious stuff. So, of course, safety first, and it's not just for the players. You've got to think about the fans who are all trying to get to the stadium, the people in the stadium, the people who are working, the staff, just everyone involved. Also, bear in mind that public transport and stuff, that's all going to shut down. I mean, it's going to be an absolute nightmare when it hits. So I
agree. The right call was to call off the game,
but
that is the right call.
Yeah, but I 100% agree. Knowing that this was a realistic possibility. There are surely numerous options that could have been put in place. And as I say, including having a plane on standby to fly the teams
through the typhoon and see which one lasts. Yeah.
Exactly. Play no, but
game of chicken through the typhoon.
But why not fly somewhere where the typhoon isn't? I mean, if you can't do it, you could have had a double header. If you needed a crowd, you have to refund the people that are going to miss out. But you just say to someone else, look, you lucked out. We're having a double header.
Yeah, buy tickets on the thing. Exactly. Or like you say, if we built in a week, it's different. If it had been like when the volcano in Iceland, if it had been an incident like that's just nature. There's nothing you can do about that. That's no one's fault. You can't plan that. Or when the Chavs rioted in London or whatever, like there's nothing you can, you can't see those things. But
I'm not sure the riots in London are quite the same as a typhoon.
No, of course they're not.
Or an Icelandic volcano.
Yes, an Icelandic volcano. Okay, yeah. I just wanted to have a go at the dickheads who rioted. But let's.
Did you ever manage to sell that TV?
Quite a few of them actually. I've still got a few going. But if it's an act of God, like a freak act of God, so be it. But
so a bit like a typhoon, for example.
Like a typhoon, yes, exactly. But I mean a freak act. But with this known, like you say, a contingency in my mind should have been.
That's my only gripe with this whole thing. I think they've looked at it and they've decided England looked the strongest side. These are the two teams that are going to go through it anyway. Let's just do this and move on. It's the same with New Zealand and Italy. Obviously, the difference in the England-France game is that France theoretically could have gone through in top spot, but I imagine they're sitting there going, "No, we're good.
Yeah, we're cool.
We're happy to go through in second. We'd rather have Wales." Well, actually, Wales-Australia is irrelevant, but it's more about semi-finals if they can get through, isn't it? We'd rather have South Africa than New Zealand, but. And
the All Blacks, yeah. Although France have got a reasonable record against the All Blacks in World Cups,
particularly in semi-finals.
Yeah,
so, I think it's the right. I think for England, this is what we want. Lots of people say, "Oh, you want to avoid the New Zealand, and are England going to throw the France game in order to avoid New Zealand?" No. We would rather have New Zealand in the semi-final rather than wait until the final when they are going to be more up for it than at any other time.
So yeah, this is one of I wanted to go for a top spot, absolutely. So one of the things, there are a few things that have annoyed me about this. One of the things mentioning when we beat the Aussies like a naughty Catholic schoolgirl, I know for a fact, I don't know for a fact, I am fairly sure that Michael Checker is going to use that. Oh, well, if we had an extra week, we would have been on Form Sport. I don't know why he's speaking like that now, but if he will use an excuse. He'll use an excuse, whatever.
Of course, he'll have his excuse pre-prepared.
And that will annoy me.
It'll get released. His post-match.
It'll be leaked before the game kicks off. Yeah,
pre-recorded. Of course, If England dominate Australia, he will definitely be referencing that fact. But let me ask you: is it a blessing for England? I would argue that it's mixed. The positives are obvious. You've got a bit more time to rest. You've got a bit more time to prepare. Less chance of injuries. But at the same time, are you coming in a little bit cold then?
I've thought about this. I've thought about this quite a bit. I don't think this is beneficial to England. Marginally, I can see the benefit. Like now, it gives everyone an extra week. It gives people, time to get fitness. But because of what you mentioned earlier about it, and because of Will in his review, we have so many world-class players. I think we kind of wanted that other match just to have the Ford Farrell axis play together again, or whatever it may be, just to maybe help Eddie in his mind. I think that extra match would have actually helped England build and progress more. I think England are going to get stronger and stronger. And an extra match would have put us in a stronger position. But it's marginal. Either way, and I'm going to say this now, and I'm going to stick by this. This will not be the reason we win the World Cup. We will win the World Cup because we're the best team. We would have won it if this game happened or if this game didn't happen.
Oh, yeah. We were beating France with a bonus point.
Yeah, of course we were.
100% agree. I think, look, it's 2 weeks. It will be 2 weeks since the Argentina game when England play their quarter final. 2 weeks is the same as the midway point in a Six Nations.
Yes.
So we're not talking about some unprecedented amount of time off. It's 1 week for Australia. These things happen in rugby all the time. So,
yeah, of course.
When it was the Tri Nations,
I don't remember the last time a World Cup match was called off.
No, not World Cups, but having a week more to prepare than your opposition, because look at the Tri Nations before it became the Championship.
Different times exactly.
Obviously, that was the case then as well. So, yeah, it's not an excuse. I would rather have had the extra game. I think we talked about this at the beginning of the World Cup. We felt that England had the best sort of lineup for their matches, gradually just increasing with intensity, so that they were absolutely prepared come knockouts. And that's been messed up a little bit by the fact that this game's not going to go ahead. Having said that, we originally stated this on the basis that we thought that France were going to be serious contenders. As it is, they've been awful. So would we have got that next level against them? I don't think so. I think, if anything, Argentina was probably going to be the peak of intensity, and it would have come down a level against France. Because against Argentina, they were playing for their lives.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know what the conclusion is there, Dan. It is what it is. It's disappointing as fans because we were obviously looking forward to watching the game, and obviously, it's clearly hugely disappointing for the England Rugby Pod fans who were hoping for a semi-live episode.
Another live
from Andy and Dan, but
exactly,
and they're not going to get that. But I don't know. Maybe we'll come up with something else. We could maybe do it for the Scotland-Japan game.
Yeah, I mean,
we won't because I'm not around. But it's a nice idea.
And I'm looking. Where are you going? Why? What are you up to?
I'm only going to see my brother, but I'm just not going to be around to record. So I'll watch it at his place.
I'll tell your brother to get over himself. Which brother?
My older brother.
Definitely tell him to get over himself.
He won't be listening.
Damn it. But it's it's a massive shame. And just as a rugby fan, World Cup match or not, I was really, really looking forward to watching England play again. And I feel a bit disheartened. But equally, England have got 3 matches, 3 bonus point wins. So I'm still ecstatic about that. What I really hope now, and yes, it's Typhoon, I hope that's the end. No more matches are called off. What does happen in the knockout stages if a match gets...
I'm guessing...
obviously, it has to be rearranged.
I'm guessing there are contingencies in place for knockout. And they move the games, and perhaps they go double-header route, but I'm not quite sure how you... things like if you suddenly move it from one end of Japan to the other, do you transport the fans that have tickets for those games, or do you just delay it and have it in the same place, but just after the but you've got a week to get it done? I don't really know, to be honest, because you can't say, right, it's the quarterfinals, but we can't play it until Thursday because of this typhoon, and then you've got the semi-final on Saturday. 2 days later. So I don't know. I'd be very curious to hear what the contingency is, because clearly you can't say it's a draw.
Right, exactly right. And you can't toss a coin for a World Cup game. It like you say, it'd be really interesting to hear what they come up with.
I did read that if in the pool stages, this is not about cancellations, but in terms of who goes through, the kind of the last line of defence, if you like, is world rankings.
Is it?
So if everything else is tied, and there's quite a few levels, so the chances are pretty slim. But if everything else is tied, then the last sort of level is world ranking.
Wow.
So can you imagine if they did that for a knockout result?
Yeah. That would piss people off, wouldn't it? Could you imagine?
The one silver lining in all this, Dan, is that we get to make predictions about England v France, and we've not been spot on just yet, but I feel confident about this one.
Do you?
I'm going to go 0-0.
0-0 draw, yeah.
0-0 draw. Obviously,
I still think England will win.
The unprecedented result, of course, is that Italy have nilled New Zealand.
Yeah, first time ever. Well done.
Is that the first time New Zealand have ever been nilled?
I don't know if it's the first time they've ever been nilled. It is by Italy.
I think it might
be. So, well played, Italy.
In living memory. So, yeah, well done, Italy. Good result. A nice way to end your World Cup campaign.
Yeah. But arrivederci. I don't even know if that's Italian.
Yeah, who knows, mate. So I had wanted to do, and to be fair, I didn't do any research for it, so it was never going to happen. But perhaps this is what we can do at the weekend if we can find time to do something different. But I wanted to do a bit of a sort of statistical analysis. I know we don't do that very often, but just on how things have gone in the World Cup so far. And I've been looking for resources for information. And got a great start chatting to Rugby Inside Line on Twitter, and they have sent me some information that they've managed to collate by being far more efficient than we are.
Oh wow!
And it's fascinating, meters run, carries, on a per team basis in order to determine, the sort of standings in terms of how teams are performing, and it's really interesting. So we will try and do some analysis on that and. Maybe that will be a way to replace the England against France game, but yeah, I think that probably, Dan. There's only so much time you can spend talking about Typhoon.
Yeah.
It is what it is. It's very disappointing, but safety first. Let's obviously hope that there are no serious issues. We don't want anyone getting hurt or worse.
Of course.
And who knows? Maybe at the last minute there'll be some like miracle, and I don't know, a load of rioters in London will cause a volcano to erupt in Iceland, which will drive the typhoon away.
I mean, that is actually quite a likely scenario as well. So
is it one that World Rugby have prepared for?
I don't think they're prepared for it. Again,
well, they should be listening then. They need to. Guys, listen, thank you so much for tuning in. Obviously, apologies that we're not going to be able to bring you England against France, but I can assure you it's not our fault. We are as disappointed as you are. We will try to come up with something interesting to bring you as an alternative. But failing that, we'll obviously be back next week as we prepare for England's quarter-final. We have qualified for the knockouts. We have 3 bonus points from the 3 matches we've played. Perfect result. We were the first team in this World Cup to qualify for the quarter-finals. Things are looking good. We'd love it if you get over to iTunes, rate us, review us, let us know what you think. If you want to get in touch with us, if you've got any comments about this, let us know how you feel about the cancellations. If you've got any clever solutions that we've not thought of, that World Rugby clearly haven't thought of, let us know about those too. You can reach us on social media at England Rugby Pod, or you can email us, englandrugbypod@gmail.com. Just keep tuning in. There is not long to go now before the knockouts begin, and that's when things really start heating up. So we will catch you very, very soon.